Welcome back, plant medicine yogis. I always want to say plant medicine gurus, but maybe that's actually what the title of this class should be, plant medicine gurus, because we are all our very own guru in our higher selves experience. So welcome back. And this is the last class. This is the last one of the series here. I hope it has been a fruitful journey for you that has caused some introspection and led to some very interesting thoughts and maybe even a little deepening in the awareness. Where have we been? Well, we traveled through the sutras in the first and second padas, where we learned a whole lot about what yoga really means in a larger, broader sense. Then we also looked into the language itself of Sanskrit and how important it is that the ancients actually found a vibrational, energetic way of communicating that goes beyond language, and why it's still important today that we continue to hearken back to it. And then we traveled through the Patanjali tree, the Ashtanga process. Now maybe you have a little deeper awareness as to what those words mean. And we realized that there were two very important roots that were holding up this tree. And the root system is the yamas and niyamas, which again are those guidelines to live by and the how-tos. And then we travel up the tree, and remember that the first one is the asanas, which is the very physical practice. Any physical practice that you do, but here specific to yoga is of course that yogic asana practice. And then there's the pranayama, any kind of breath work that is tied into that. For us in the plant medicine world, it could be your rape practice, breathing and relaxation of any kind. Then you have your pratyahara, which is your dominion over your senses. Remember that it's any practice that helps you focus in on any one of them and ultimately transcend that potential discomfort. And then that leads us very much to the concentration practice of dharana. And dharana really is anything that allows you to bring that drishti, that point, to one singular experience, that then all of these things combined help support that dhyana practice, which is the meditative practice where you can enter in, be kicked back out, enter in, come back out, spend a little longer time inside the true meditative practice of releasing it all, even the body, the mind, of course, and then finally entering into that state of samadhi, which is that union with the ultimate formless bliss, right? So that's where we've been. That's in a nutshell. And so let's go ahead and continue on where we left off to wrap this up and finally end with where we're going, self-realization. I've been talking about this concept and just kind of throwing it out there since the beginning of the class. What does it mean? Let's start with the first step, awareness, and some might call it awakening, right? We hear this in the various outlets, maybe, things that you're reading, things that you're watching, social media. They throw around this term of awakening. What does it mean? Well, the definition I put here is really a desire to stop the suffering or the struggle. That is when we come into contact with there must be a better way. It may be a physical thing. Most of us, including me, came driven by a physical ailment, a physical discomfort, a physical injury, an illness of some sort. Could also be mental health issue, a depression, a severe crippling anxiety, a post-traumatic stress issue. Emotional pain, maybe what underlies it all, of course, is the childhood trauma, lifelong trauma, ancestral trauma, whatever kind of pain that might be. So as I mentioned earlier, our life experiences up until the point where we realize there has to be a better way, or there has to be something else, is reaching potentially that breaking point, when then It awakens something in you to become a seeker. And a seeker is just someone who is looking for an alternative solution, a different option than what they've been doing. In my case, severe back pain, severe crippling migraine headaches, went up all the different things. I'm the kind of person that if somebody suggests something makes sense, I'll try it. Why not? And see if that was the one thing that made a difference. I had tried everything in the medical field, everything that a doctor would suggest, physical therapy, take this medication, take that new thing, do this other holistic practice. I tried it all. And then you get to the point of there has to be something else. What else can I try? So it elicits something in you to go research, to go read, to go find. And that's where the universe usually meets you halfway. Once you've turned on that light of wanting and being willing, then that whatever it is, book, the infomercial, the documentary, whatever it is, that person you meet that then tells you about it is what opens you up. And again, it doesn't have to straight be, plant medicines or be this or be that. It's one thing that leads to the next thing, which leads you to the next thing, and so on. But you start to realize that there's a method here. There's kind of something interwoven. And that is the path, right? That is the path. When you look back, if you've been on a plant medicine journey or you're considering one, when you look back, you look at, how did this come to me? How did I first find out about this healing method or that healing method or this thing that made me that much better or brought me where I am? You start to see this invisible force that kind of got you there. Had it not been for this one person that you bumped into, had it not been for that one advertisement you saw, had it not been for that one book you read, you wouldn't have pursued something, right? So you see there's that beautiful mystery that's woven in there, and that's what the dharma is. The dharma is your path towards this self-realization, towards enlightenment, starts very, very small, and it could have started, in some other lifetime, and we're just weaving that path through. And I like to say it's our way of helping one another find our way back home. In a lot of these, ancient religious practices and beliefs is that, and spiritual really is that we've never left, right? This is the Maya, this is the Lila, this is the illusion that we live, this is the dream. So when we awaken, truly, we realize we never left home. However, in our simulation here in the 3D world, we're all trying to find the same thing, the pathway home. And I think that when I started off this talk about the Ashtanga tree, I said something about finding your way onto the tree, right? Because if you're just walking aimlessly, you're still not seeking, there's not a method to this process. But once you find your way, you stumble upon one of the branches of the tree, then you realize, wait, there has to be a systematic approach, a better way to go about this. And this is what we've talked about in this class, right? That there is in the support system of the yamas and niyamas, and then you can kind of walk the way systematically. So it's our way of helping one another find our way back home, and it starts here in this first step of becoming awakened, sometimes through pain and suffering, and then becoming a seeker. So once you're there, then comes the work. The path, right? The path has its work, and it's really finding that healing path for you. It doesn't look the same for everyone. The path is yours and yours alone. It's how it looks, the ups and downs, the hills, the rockiness of it, the help along the way. All of that is created by you, but it is an interesting place that maybe it starts off kind of difficult and then hits patches of comfort and then gets difficult again, or it might look very wide and comfy. It's just really how you make it. But one thing, as I mentioned, leads to another, and that's where your self-exploration begins. You might do some things that are helpful in the moment, then no longer become helpful. Then you find certain other healing modalities that become more relevant to you at that point in your healing. So that's where it's a beautiful weaving of an explorational path. And then through this kind of, I talk about it first, it's kind of random. It's kind of like that experience that I knew in my head I wanted to do yoga, but I just was in too much pain and too much bad shape that at first I just kind of went once a week, and then I kind of went twice a week. And then after you kind of seriously start to realize, whoa, I'm on a path here, not just with one thing, but everything, then you start to take this work of self exploration, self expansion, self realization ultimately seriously. And when you take that work seriously, when you realize I'm not just going on a retreat to have fun and to, drink with some buddies or just who cares? I'm having the time of my life. Once you realize, no, this is sacred work. This is work on myself. This is work on my purpose, my meaning. Then you realize, oh, this is the sadhana. Sadhana is that daily devotional practice in yourself, right? I remember when I first took like a finance class in college long, long ago, it was this concept of when you get paid, you should always take 10% off the top, maybe even more, of course, but minimally 10% off the top and pay yourself before you go spend it on this, that, the other, all your bills, everything you need. Just take 10% off and then do what you will with that, right? Like invest it, grow it, save it, however you're going to do that, but pay yourself that 10%. That's kind of what you start realizing when you start doing these things, is that you're not being selfish by taking time out for yourself, by going on a retreat, by doing your daily practice and removing yourself from, your family, your work, your this or that. You're finding those times. That's why yogis often in this sadhana, in this daily devotional practice, may wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's what's usually, that quiet time, maybe even 4 o'clock in the morning. But between those wee hours in the morning of 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, things are still asleep. Things are still quiet. There's still a little bit of darkness to help you silence and quiet the mind. So all of this combined allows for this perfect environment to cultivate this daily sacred work. So before the phone starts ringing, before the cell phone starts bringing in the text messages and the news of the day, you've already completed your sadhana. And that's the paying yourself that 10%. So your serious practice emerges from this quote unquote work. So then where do we go from there? I would say the expansion of the soul self. This is where you can perceive noticeable changes in yourself. So after you've become a seeker, you've realized, okay, there's something else. Then now I take my practices seriously. This isn't just going on a vacation. This isn't just, throwing my money away into yet another fun-filled experience. This is serious. This is soul stuff. This is spiritual stuff. This is starting to feel very, very, very important to me. So then that's where you start to perceive some deep changes in yourself. Things that perhaps brought you joy and happiness. And I'm talking maybe more superficially, right? Like one of the definitions of, or one of the symptoms for depression is anhedonia, which that just means that you lost the pleasure in things that usually gave you pleasure. And so, but this is very, very different than that, right? In a depressed state, it's kind of like, oh, I used to love to hang out with my friends and now I don't. This could also mean the same thing. I used to like to hang out with my friends, but now I don't, but for different reasons. It's because maybe now you feel like, hey, every time I hung out with my friends, they talked about shallow stuff. They talked about, going out drinking, partying, being promiscuous, who knows? So your value system starts to become a lot more important. The things that are said, the things that you participate in, the people's energy, the places have energies. So when you start to interact with things that are no longer resonating where you're trying to go or where you're vibrating at, then there starts to be a difficulty that you start to sense. You start to realize, okay, things that I used to do before, things that I used to grab for, maybe it's food, maybe it was shopping, maybe it was people, things, places, shiny objects of some sort. Maybe there starts to be this other awareness arise that says, that's no longer doing it for me. It's usually along these lines. So your focus starts to become narrower and narrower, and that path, that dharma path we were talking about, starts to become a lot more clearly evident. So that's why this path starts out very, very wide, very, very wide. You know, you could be all the way over here and still be on your path. You could be way, way over there and still be on the path. Well, once you get serious about this, once you get serious about the, hey, I'm really interested now in this self-realization. Another word for it is self-actualization. I'm really feeling like that's starting to take a lot more space front and center in my life. It also coincides. I'm not going to say that you can't be a self-realized person, you know, as a young person or as a 20-year-old or as a 30-year-old. Of course, there's been prodigies that have come into the planet that are already self-actualized, boom, coming into it. But for the vast majority of us, there's that old adage of the midlife crisis. And with that midlife crisis came this feeling of, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just need something different. And that's part of that first step of feeling that first discomfort with things not fitting as well as they used to. And it could be a ton of things, but the job is usually one that's a low-hanging fruit, that maybe what you did for 20, 30 years is no longer fulfilling, something of that nature. But in any case, that period of time in the late 30s, 40s, 50s is that time of awakening for most souls, right? You're no longer, hopefully, struggling with survival in any way. That's where that kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're kind of going up that pyramid, which is similar to this, right? At the top of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that self-actualization. So he's talking about much the same stuff. You've already figured out how to pass the survival stuff, right? The food, the shelter, and then you start to go up this pyramid where towards the end of all of those things, the human starts to think about, well, what's next? What's on the other side, right? Once you've lived half of your life, then you realize, oh man, I only have the next half left. So I have to start paying attention to what comes after that. So I think mortality kicks in, and a lot of these things, maybe children have grown up. Some of these things we've tried to accomplish have been done. The ladders have been climbed. So then we start to wonder, what's next? Or is this it? Right? So that prompts a clear awakening, starting your sadhana, which is your personal devotional, daily devotional, and then practice. And then you go into this expansion of the soul. You take your path very seriously now. And then you're on this path to self-realization. So what is self-realization that we've been talking about? Why the tree altogether? Why the yamas and niyamas? Who cares? This is the end goal, I think, for everyone. Now, does this have to all happen in one lifetime? Well, no. That's what the ancient sages were talking about, is that this could happen over hundreds, thousands. We hope not as many, right? But the idea is that you go through this schooling system of life, of earth, and then you clearly arrive at a place where it all comes together. All of the pieces in this seeking journey that you started off on comes together, and you realize that many things, including that you no longer seek the answers. So one of the tales of being self-realized, and again, let me know if anybody arrives yet. I haven't, but when you start to feel this feeling of, I don't need to search as much. I don't need to know as much anymore. And not because you're lazy, not because I want to take my foot off the gas pedal, but because your soul feels at peace. Your soul feels at peace. You're not threatened by different viewpoints. You're not threatened by the thought of, is there a God? Is there not a God? Am I the God? Is that guy the God? You're not threatened by anything anymore. The ability to, open up your consciousness allows you to have a whole lot of open and broad perspective on all things. And so you're realizing that also the answers aren't so much outside of yourself as they have always been inside of yourself. And I know we hear that a lot. Oh, look within, look within. But we're constantly looking out to see who else is doing it right, or can I get some guidance around that? And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you achieve self-realization, you realize it was always and will continue to always be in here, your answers. So you no longer are looking so much so for others' approvals or following traditional paths. At this point, you become your own guru, your own path and trailblazer, path setter. You're no longer afraid of judgment of others. You've released yourself. And there's full liberation, there's partial liberation, but nevertheless freedom from all these things that bind us. Living is not all happiness. So that's not what this is saying. Oh, cupcakes and rainbows, I can just sit here and meditate all day. No, it's that you understand that there's pain and suffering in the world, but that you can still live in peace, joy, happiness in your soul and emanate that to all others. You're closely connected and you honor nature and yourself. You know that's just one. Nature and the self is just one. Plant medicines do an incredible job of clearly, with use of no words, showing us that we are one with nature, therefore universe, therefore everything, cosmos. So above all, you found your own divinity. And you see and recognize that in all living beings. So you're no longer seeking because it's all inside of you. You're at peace. You're in love with yourself, with others, regardless of the imperfectness of this world and its experience. You're no longer seeking outward. You know all the answers are inside. You know. So that's where we are headed. That peace, that equanimity, that non-searching, non-wanting, non-needing, just being. That's self-realization. That's self-actualization. So the path of this evolution of the soul really is that the ego moves from a very clear and simple service to self and evolves into a service to others. This can mean a lot of things, but basically, you are in a very egocentric way. Think about a toddler, right? A toddler, but inherently is egocentric because the world that he or she is waking up in is one of who am I with regards to anything. So there's always, the first thing is when you give them something, a toy, they always look at it, admire it, love it, and then say, mine, mine, mine. Because we always have to learn what ownership means. Ownership is, yes, this is a pen and this is awesome, and I love it, and it's mine. And then as we get older, and hopefully, we get coached in the right direction and we realize within our own soul self, here comes another child, doesn't have this, wants to play with this, and loves this, I can say, yes, you could borrow it. You could borrow it. And then that person can love it, play it. And I notice all kinds of feelings in myself, but realize, oh, I'm going to get it back. And when I do, it'll be mine again. And it's okay. I can let you borrow it and I don't lose it. And it's fine. I would even say, going a step further, a self-realized person, using that example of the toddler, would say, here, I played with it. It doesn't matter if you give it back or not, because I don't need it to be happy. Here, you can have it. And in sharing, I find joy in sharing it with you. So it's moving from a service to self to a service to others, finding joy, peace in all of that. Now, this isn't a suffering thing. This isn't a victim thing. Well, no, I don't have, and I have to give, and I am now, this victim or this martyr. No, I give it with love. I give it with love. I fully give it with love. I don't need anything. So the unique thing about plant medicines is that it experientially shows you that this energy that we are, this consciousness, this spirit, is not necessarily connected to the body or the mind. It's its own thing. And ego evolution is a critical part of this self-realization, that your soul doesn't need anything. It doesn't need that shiny object or that toy or anything for that matter. And that ultimately, once I'm at peace with myself and I love myself, and I'm in a right relationship with abundance and the universe and everything, then I realize that my greatest joy and gift is to service others, whether that's through my children, my husband, my wife, my partner, my best friend, my enemy, somebody who challenges me, right? All the way to those extremes. So here's the last big piece of our conversation. What are the side effects of going on this path of self-realization? And this could very well be with or without plant medicines. Okay, once your soul is ready to start exploring, to start seeking, to start reading, to start consuming this other different kind of material for self-awakening, for self-realization, things will happen in your life. And I want to be real serious about what are some of these things that do happen in your life, and why is the ego so terrified on going on this Ashtanga path? Why is the ego at every step of the way crying out to us, don't do that, don't do that, you're going to lose yourself, you're going to lose everything you've worked so hard to gain and to have and to hold? And this is why. Let's go into, what is the ego so afraid of losing? Why does the ego not want to go on these paths? Why does it not want to have a daily sadhana, daily devotional practice? Why does it not want to keep walking on that dharma path? Why? Well, I think I'm going to start backwards. Let's look at the negative effects. Potential negative effects that the ego is definitely afraid to have you go on this path. Well, you might notice through this putting one foot in front of the other Ashtanga path, you might notice radical changes in your life. Things will start to happen. Things will start to move in a certain direction that maybe you did not anticipate. You might not have thought, oh my goodness, if I had known this so that I'd be here, I would have told you, no way, not me, no way, no how. And yet it takes you in that direction. Not against your will, never against your will. You always have and retain your free will, but this is what you start to do when you listen to your internal guidance, to your intuition, aka your soul, your true authentic self. So it starts to move you in a different direction than perhaps your ego, which is usually very loud, usually wants to go this other way. Okay, so that's the conflict there. So radical changes appear in your life. Maybe you move on from relationships. This one is hard because we work really hard to build a world around us, built of certain people, some of them in our family. And the first people who will start to not like your path towards your self realization might be those closest to you. They're the ones who might see the changes first because they know you so well. And that's true. They do. They've known the old you so well. They know exactly, how you operate, what you say, what moves you, what doesn't move you. And when these things start to shift at the very core of you, they may not be okay with it. What does that mean for them? What does that mean for them? Maybe they liked the person you were, right? Maybe they do. Now, your soul self never wants to lead you in the wrong direction. I want you to know that. Your soul self has your best interest at heart, your best interest. The book you are writing about you in this lifetime has your name on it. It is about you. It is not about others. It's about your path. When we come into this planet, when we come into this world through birth, we come alone. You come by yourself. Yeah, maybe you're a twin, and maybe you have a twin, soul that came in at the same time as you, but you still have your own free will. You have your own experiences, even as a twin, even as an identical twin, you have your own experiences. So we come in alone, and then when you die, you most certainly die alone, right? And I don't mean surrounded by loved ones. I mean that death process transition, you go it alone. And nothing shows us that better than the ego deaths in plant medicines. Again, I go back to the Bufo potential experience, right? Where you go through that dress rehearsal of that body dissolution and spirit, kind of goes one way, your body the other. Nobody, even if somebody's holding your hand, can go with you on that path. So if you move on from relationships, it's because they no longer fit. They no longer support your new vibratory frequency where your soul is trying to go. This is not a bad thing. I want you to know that. This isn't a bad thing. It could be a toxic relationship that you never had the courage to step away from or to speak up in. It could be somebody holding you back for their own purposes. It could be a million things, right? It could be the bad friend who secretly always wanted you to fail, right? But in front was like, yay, I'm happy for you. Reduced or no drinking. So one of the things that I always tell people is when you start plant medicines, and this is where I really feel the use of the word drugs, that really gets under my skin when people refer to plant medicines as drugs. Drugs are those things that numb you, that have you forget what, suffering or what life circumstance is trying to teach you or bring up for you for change. And so anything that you take that's a stupefier, that is a numbing agent, that has you run away from your problems or what's in the mirror, that's a drug. That's a drug. And please use that term, a drug. Alcohol is a drug. People can be drugs themselves, food is a drug. Shopping is a drug. Plant medicines are medicine that leads to healing. A plant medicine will tell you the truth to your face, whether you like it or not, whether it's, hard to hear or not, but you better believe it's for your absolute highest and best to evolve, to get to that next better plane for yourself. So drinking is going to be one of the first things that's going to lose its taste, lose its flavor. It's not going to be as good as it once was. You don't need a numbing agent once you start to take care of your traumas, of your hurts, of your pains, and eventually get to forgiveness and all of that. So you don't need drinking. The eating habits will change. And again, this isn't all going to happen in your first journey and the first time. No. That's why this is a path. a long path. It could be years, it could be 10 years, 20 years, it could be a long time. But I'm just saying, what are some of the, you know it's going to happen down the road at some point on your path. So reduce or no drinking, eating habits are going to change. You're going to feel it, especially with something like an ayahuasca. You feel sick to your stomach and you're purging and you hear in your mind, well, you shouldn't have eaten that, right? It just kind of has this funny way of showing you very, very experientially, like that doesn't lead to a healthy, loving, body in that relationship with yourself. Focus shifted to different things. So maybe the things that used to, enliven you won't, maybe like, where you spend your time, your money, your effort, it's going to be different. Maybe it's calling you to be more connected, more grounded, more fulfilling experiences of a different nature. Family and friends not supportive. I kind of talked about that in the relationships part. Why would they not be supportive of you improving yourself? Well, because there's a relationship back to themselves. If you're improving yourself, then you're asking them through experience to do as I do. Look at yourself, improve yourself, look at your traumas, heal yourself. And a lot of people are not ready, nor willing, nor wanting. So when you start on this path, other people are going to say, oh, look at you. You're goody two-shoes. What do you know? You know everything out here. So there takes a whole lot of strength and courage to walk this path. And one of them is that your friends and family may not be supportive of this new path. Your current job may not fit. It may not fit because the values of the company you work for, the energy of the people around you, the things that you do repetitively for 8, 10, 12 hours a day may not feel like this is why I incarnated in a body and what I came here to do. We always say after a plant medicine, never, ever, ever quit a job, go divorce someone, go tell somebody off. Never do that right after a medicine journey, because you'll feel very empowered to do these things. And you're like, no, I'm just going to take a machete and like tear my life apart and put it right. Everything at its due time. If it's the right thing to do, any of these things, they will still be there. A month later, they will still be there. A year later, that message will still be there. So if it's a big decision in your life, always sit with it. Always meditate on it. Always go back to the medicine, ask for a second opinion. Always talk to somebody about it. Always flush it out before taking these drastic changes and decisions in your life. However, if it's a true soul change, if it's a change that your soul is truly, truly wanting from you, then there's nothing you can do. Actually, maybe you could drink alcohol and take drugs to like numb that part of you away, but it'll never go away. It'll be that little that's telling you this is something we really need you to take care of in your life. Current place you live may also not fit. Why? The vibrational frequency is no longer right. I heard 3 things you can do if you really want a reboot in your life. Number 1, change where you live. Number 2, change your job. Number 3, change your name. So those are some of the things that obviously Control Alt Delete, kind of like your life in a very quick and fast way. Your social circle can be reduced or changed. Well, the people that were into the things that you were into before are still going to be there and do that, but you might not click into that circle anymore. So that might feel a little jarring, a little, what am I doing? Am I on the wrong path? Am I going to be one of these weirdos that goes and, like this picture very well shows, am I going to be that one weirdo dude wearing, some kind of weird garb up in the Himalayas? And then you have external focus becomes internal, right? You start caring a whole lot less about what people think about you, what you do, and you start trusting your gut, your intuition, your alignment is much more important than what some unbalanced person that isn't on their path has to say about you and your path. So let's go to the positive. That was all the things that could go in a certain way. I don't look at it sideways. I look at it as necessary change. for you to be free. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying any one of these things is a walk in the park. And that I said to myself, that's it, I'm not doing plant medicines anymore. I don't want to know anymore. I don't want any more change, because sometimes those changes are really big. And so you got to sit with them for a long time. And again, do them little by little so that it doesn't feel so jarring and like you have lost yourself. Now, the positive effects, of course, are physical health improved. I can't say this enough, right? I can't say how many times people say after I do, oh my gosh, you look so much younger, you look so much more energetic. What are you doing? What are you taking? It's living in alignment with yourself starts to show both internally and externally. When you love yourself down to the cells. You love your heart, you love your liver, you love your kidneys. You talk to your liver and your kidneys and say, I love you. Thank you for supporting my life. It's something that medicine isn't going to give you with a pill. It's something that you experience, and you just love yourself and you heal yourself. You start to believe in the power of, your thoughts and your words and your mind, and how that permeates throughout your body. Your mental health obviously is improved because one has to do with the other and the other with the other. They're in a symbiotic relationship. And so your mental health is going to improve. I'm not going to say that life is cupcakes and rainbows. I'm going to say this over and over, but you are able to be much more resilient. The bounce back is quicker. The coming back to your center, which we talked about, is quicker, especially if you are on the path and you're doing your practices. I have fallen off the wagon and just, in bed, can't do anything. And then you realize, I got to get back to my practices. I got to get back to my sadhana. And once you do, oh my goodness, I start to feel better. Well, yes. Okay. Because I'm reconnecting to myself, reconnecting to what's good, reconnecting to what's right. And lo and behold, there's my physical, there's my mental health. Relationships improved. Yes, you may not be in the same relationships with the same crowds, with the same people, but your relationships are meaningful, are loving, are heartfelt. And again, I'm not saying you can't be in disruptive relationships. They have something to teach you. Now it's different people. But once you've walked this path, you're going to start to look at, what am I doing in my relationships that I'm attracting this same or similar experience to myself? What do I need to learn from this person? What do I need to learn so I don't keep having the same type of person recycled back into my life? Those are the types of things that plant medicine teaches you. Authentic, positive self-image. So it's about you loving you, not through, selfies and through, filters and this kind of thing. It's more through that true acceptance of the self and love of the self. You're going to heal some childhood trauma. That's a given. Plant medicine starts there. You can't get to all this self-optimization. I often hear, guys, or not guys, but anyone in general, but like, I want to do this for the next best, $1 million idea and whatever. And I always laugh because, okay, sure. Yeah, you can get there and it will give you that information. But first you have to start with your childhood trauma. So once you've cleaned all that up, it's going to start giving you that other stuff. So let's start there. So you're going to definitely heal some childhood trauma. You're going to reduce stress in your life because you're going to feel like a weight has just been lifted off your shoulders each and every time at the end. You're going to love yourself. Something that not a lot of people can say, and look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. I love you. I love you. Self-touch, this ability to love yourself warmly and embrace this life relationship. Balanced approach to life. So again, it's going to teach you that equanimity, that, hey, maybe I don't have to fly off the handle all the time so much. Maybe I can control that a little bit. I can lessen the effect in my life with others. I can start to see my footprint with everyone I am, interacting with on a daily basis. Control over your emotions. I don't like the word control, but maybe more like dominion, maybe more like mastery emotions. We start off with a huge range of emotions, rage, fear, and we start to get those to be a little less, volatile and a little less wide in its spectrum and much more around compassion, love, empathy, joy, happiness. And again, it doesn't mean that you're just going to be silly, silly happy all the time, but gosh, wouldn't it be nice to be peaceful and just kind of be there? You don't have to don a giant smile on your face. Be nice, but just peace. Peace. Positive relationship with abundance. How many of us, I know, certain cultures all around the world have a difficulty with abundance, with receiving anything, love, care, relationships, of course, money, but developing that positive relationship with abundance. And last but not least, you're going to find your spirituality, whatever that means for you, in whatever definition you have this experience, or you're going to have this experience with your higher self, with your oversoul, with great mother, with the big spirit, but you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it, and you're going to play with it, and you're going to be in it the way it was meant to be, experiential, not theoretical, experiential. And back to the Sanskrit where we started. And I'm going to sing this to you the way it was meant to be, perhaps not in the right, perfect, way, but Loka samasta sukhino bhavatu. And this means, may all beings everywhere be happy and free. That is my true sentiment to you, to the entire planet, to all beings in all of existence. I thank you for listening. I thank you for sticking around. I thank you for being a seeker, and I thank you for being on this path. I know for a fact that when one soul heals, we all heal. So we are in this together. We are walking one another home. And I will share with you this last Sanskrit word that I'm sure you've heard. What does it mean? Namaste. It's the divine light that shines within me, recognizes and honors the divine light that also shines in you and all beings without exception. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, which means Om peace, Om peace, Om peace. And Om is the sound of all creation. And with that, I graduate all of you as plant medicine yogis. May you go on your path, on your dharma. May you continue your daily sadhana, and may you walk your way back home. Thank you for listening.